Hello, and welcome to another edition of News Currents. I am your host, Gary Aubrey. Coming up, 2020 presidential race heats up. Protesters respond to police shooting in Wisconsin, and new mouse lemur species discovered. But first, who am I? I grew up in New Jersey, where I was born 53 years ago. I moved to Washington, D.C. for college and law school. After graduation, I served as a top advisor for several Republican candidates. In 2016, I led Donald Trump's successful 2016 campaign, making me the first woman to do this in a presidential race. For the last 3.5 years, I have been one of the best-known spokespeople for the White House. In 2018, I became senior counselor to the president. Since gaining this position, however, my husband and 15-year-old daughter have both expressed strong criticism of President Trump. My daughter said she wants to leave our home. I have recently resigned my job, saying I wanted to spend more time with my family. Who am I? Kellyanne Conway.
Well, now at 10:30, breaking news out of Washington, D.C. tonight. On the eve of the Republican National Convention, White House counselor Kellyanne Conway announced she's leaving the Trump administration. In a statement, Conway said she will depart at the end of the month to focus on family matters. Conway's husband, George, a vocal critic of President Trump, tweeted he would be leaving his role with the Lincoln Project for similar reasons.
Their 15-year-old daughter, Claudia, tweeted yesterday that she was seeking emancipation from her parents. She had recently gained social media attention for critical posts about the president and her parents' clashing views. Well, in her statement, Kellyanne Conway also said, "The past 4 years have allowed me blessings beyond compare. As a part of the history on election night 2016 and as senior counselor to the president, it's been heady, it's been humbling. I am deeply grateful for the president, for this honor, to the First Lady, the Vice President, and Mrs. Pence, my colleagues in the White House and the administration, and the countless people who supported me and my work."
Yeah, this is completely my choice and my voice. She ends there. Now, Conway was scheduled to speak at the RNC that starts tomorrow. She has been with the Trump campaign since 2016.
And now it's time for news names, news places, and news words. News names. Chadwick Boseman, U.S. actor, producer, director, 1976 to 2020. Donald Trump, current U.S. president, former businessman. Jacob Blake, Kenosha resident shot 7 times by a police officer. Joe Biden, former vice president, current presidential candidate. Nicolas Maduro, current president of Venezuela. Simon Bolivar, Venezuelan military officer, led independence movement in South and Central America 1783 to 1830. And in news places, we have Delaware, Madagascar, New York, South Carolina, Venezuela, and Wisconsin. And news words, we have biodiversity, measure of variety of life in a particular ecosystem. Boycott, refusal to do business with a company or nation as a way of forcing policy change. Incumbent, one who currently holds a position or office. Matriarchal, centered around female leaders as a society or culture. Nocturnal, active or occurring at night. Nominee, candidate proposed for a certain contest or award. Primate, member of order primates, including monkeys, apes, lemurs, and humans. Protest, action or statement objecting to a policy, decision, or circumstance. And terrorist, one who seeks to effect political change through fear and/or acts of violence. The 2020 presidential race heats up. In August, both major political parties officially nominated their presidential candidates. The parties held large meetings called conventions to do this. These conventions were mostly held online and on TV due to the coronavirus outbreak. The Republican Party nominated incumbent President Donald Trump to be their candidate for the 2020 presidential race. Vice President Mike Pence will again be his running mate. Trump was born in 1946 in Queens, one of the 5 boroughs that make up New York City. Before becoming president, he was mostly known for being a businessman. He was also the main figure in the TV shows The Apprentice and Celebrity Apprentice. But he surprised everyone in 2016 by capturing the Republican nomination and then winning the general presidential election over the Democratic candidate Hillary Clinton. This fall, Trump is running on his record as president. He says he is proud of how well the economy was doing before the COVID-19 struck. He claims that he has made the U.S. stronger by getting rid of what he says were unfair trade deals with other countries. Trump has also been very critical of protests against police brutality. He says that he is the right person to bring law and order to the country. Here you see a picture of Democratic nominee Joe Biden. Biden was born in Scranton, Pennsylvania in 1942. He worked as a lawyer before entering politics. In 1972, he was elected to represent Delaware in the U.S. Senate. At just 30 years old, he was the 6th youngest senator in history. Biden served in the Senate for 36 years. In 2009, he became the Vice President of the United States for 2 four-year terms under President Barack Obama. Biden chose Senator Kamala Harris as his running mate for this election. Biden says his experience in government will help him be a better president than Donald Trump. He claims that Trump mishandled the coronavirus crisis by not taking it seriously enough, and that the economy has suffered for this reason. Biden also says that Trump has tried to set Americans against each other by criticizing racial justice protesters. Joe Biden will turn 78 later this year. If he is elected, he will be the oldest president at the start of his term in U.S. history. Despite their ages, both candidates say they have the best ideas for the future of the U.S. They will make speeches this fall to make their ideas clearer to voters. They will also face off in 3 televised debates this fall. Every 4 years, citizens of the United States get to decide who their next president will be. Some people believe that choosing a president is the most important decision Americans make as citizens. The next president of the United States will almost certainly be one of the 2 men shown here. In a normal year, they would both be traveling all over the U.S. to meet voters and give speeches. President Trump, who is a Republican, says he should be re-elected because he has made the country better over the last 3.5 years. Joe Biden says Trump has not done his job well and argues that the Democratic Party has a better vision for the U.S. The popularity of these candidates is measured in polls, but opinions can change quickly depending on what happens in the weeks ahead. News Currents wants you to vote for the person you would like to be the next president. Here's what I would like you to do. Write on a slip of paper T for Trump or B for Biden. I'll have a box at the front desk labeled News Currents. Drop your slip of paper into the box by September 17th. I will tally up the votes and send them to News Currents on their website. The following week, I will share the results from East Castle and from News Currents. Remember, your opinion matters. Protesters respond to police shooting in Wisconsin. Here you see the photo of 29-year-old Jacob Blake with his children. Blake lives in Kenosha. On August 23rd, a police officer shot Blake 7 times in the back as he tried to get in his car. The shooting was captured on video, which was replayed on the news. Some of the details leading up to the shooting are still unclear. The police say they responded to a call about an argument involving Blake. Blake's lawyer says he was trying to stop an argument before going to his car. Blake survived the shooting, but his family says he may never be able to walk again. After the shooting, protests against police violence and racial injustice began in Kenosha and other cities around the country. During one of these protests, a 17-year-old from Illinois shot 3 protesters, killing 2. He was later charged with murder. Earlier this year, an unarmed black man named George Floyd was killed by the police in Minneapolis. After Floyd's death, protesters took to the streets all around the world. Protests in some cities like Portland, Oregon, have been going on all summer. Protesters also demand justice for Breonna Taylor and Elijah McClain. Both Taylor and McClain were killed by the police, although they had not committed any crimes. So far, no officers in either case have been charged with crimes. 3 days after Jacob Blake was shot, the Milwaukee Bucks staged a boycott of their playoff game against the Orlando Magic. Blake was shot in Kenosha, which is only 40 miles south of Milwaukee. The goal of the boycott was to draw attention to Blake's shooting and to encourage change to policing in America. Sterling Brown, a player for the Bucks, shown here reading a statement to reporters, said, quote, "Despite the overwhelming plea for change, there have been no actions, so our focus cannot be on basketball," unquote. In the days after, other sports leagues, including the Women's National Basketball Association, or WNBA, and Major League Baseball, MLB, also postponed games in support of the NBA boycott. Since the boycott, the NBA has said they will create a social justice coalition to help create police reform. The league also said NBA stadiums will be used as voting places during the November elections. The recent protests and boycotts are in response to a disturbing trend in America. While gathering data on police killings can be difficult, a group called Mapping Police Violence has begun to track incidents of police shootings since 2013. So far in 2020, 768 people have been killed by police. 28% of those killed were black, even though black people make up only 13% of the population. Between 2013 and 2019, 27 black people were killed in Wisconsin by police.
Turn to something we saw that was absolutely extraordinary yesterday. Mass protests by pro athletes taking a major stance demanding justice over the police shooting of Jacob Blake. The Milwaukee Bucks sparked a basketball boycott and a chain reaction throughout the sports world. This morning, the NBA postseason in doubt following the police-involved shooting of Jacob Blake. An all-players meeting was held to discuss whether the NBA bubble season should move forward at all. LeBron James reportedly walked out of that meeting after voting to stop the season. He sent out this tweet, "We demand change. Sick of it." This comes after the Milwaukee Bucks announced they would not play their playoff game.
When we take the court and represent Milwaukee and Wisconsin, we are expected to play at a high level, give maximum effort, and hold each other accountable. We are demanding the same from lawmakers and law enforcement.
The NBA postponed all 3 of yesterday's playoff games after the Bucks' decision. NBA on TNT Sports commentator Kenny Smith walked off the set in solidarity with those players.
As a black man, as a former player, I think it's best for me to support the players and just not be here tonight.
Former NBA player Chris Webber added that these players are taking the first steps.
I don't know the next steps. Don't really care what the next steps are because the first steps are to garner attention. And they have everybody's attention around the world right now.
One night earlier, Los Angeles Clippers coach Doc Rivers delivered a passionate call for equality.
We keep loving this country, and this country does not love us back. And it's really so sad. Like, I should just be a coach. And it's so often reminded of my color. You know, it's just really sad. We got to do better. But we got to demand better.
Other major sports followed suit. The WNBA, Major League Baseball, and soccer all postponing their games in solidarity. Dominic Smith, a New York Mets player seen kneeling before last night's game, worked his way through tears after what he described as a long day.
I think the most difficult part is to see, like, people still don't care. Being a black man in America, it's not easy, so.
I want to bring in ESPN's Stephen A. Smith for us this morning. Stephen A., always good to see you. There are 3 playoff games, NBA playoff games scheduled today. What do you think the chances are those are happening?
I say 50-50 right now. They're scheduled to have a meeting today to resume talks from last night. Last night didn't end so well. A lot of guys were frustrated because clearly the Milwaukee Bucks took a stand. That was a great thing. The flip side to it is that it was a relatively unilateral decision. They hadn't informed anybody. And so because of that, it caught a few of the players and a few of the teams off guard. They had a meeting last night at 8 p.m. Eastern. They were in there for hours, and ultimately it was put to a vote, and everybody voted to continue playing, with the exception of the Los Angeles Lakers and the Los Angeles Clippers, from what I was told. And obviously LeBron James walked out very frustrated that there didn't appear to be a plan, but still in all stood with the decision that the Milwaukee Bucks made. Obviously, guys are incredibly frustrated. You see Dominique Smith from the New York Mets, the imagery of him and what his feelings and frustrations are certainly epitomize those of a lot of NBA players for sure. And that's why I think you also saw LeBron James react in the way that he reacted. You saw his tweet and what have you. He's clearly fed up and wanted to do away with the season.
And Stephen A., you said they're not on the same page. Okay, but if you got the Lakers voting to not continue the season, that's LeBron. Can this bubble season continue if LeBron doesn't want to be a part of it?
Well, my personal opinion is no, because the Los Angeles Lakers and the Los Angeles Clippers, as teams, they're the championship favorites. You can throw the Milwaukee Bucks in there, even though if you've watched them play during the bubble, some people would say no. It's about the Lakers and it's about the Clippers, the two teams in Los Angeles, the top two market in the United States of America, with two of the preeminent stars in the game, two of the top 5 players on the planet, and LeBron James and Kawhi Leonard. If they don't play and they're not participating, then any champion that's crowned is going to be delegitimized, in my opinion, and I think that of most NBA fans. And so it's that important. LeBron James is the iconic figure, clearly in the NBA, arguably in all the world of sports. And if he's not interested in playing and you can't convince him to play, then you've got a significant problem if you are the National Basketball Association, who, by the way, is a bit lost at this particular moment in time. They've spent over $200 million to contribute to this bubble, to make this bubble happen. Their belief is that they've capitulated and they've done everything that the players have asked them to do. I've spoken to several owners over the last 12 hours, and they have literally asked the question. We know that there are serious problems in our society and what have you, but we, as the NBA community, have stood with these players. We will continue to stand with these players and do all that we can. And in light of that reality, since we definitely did agree to the bubble and we financed it, what's the problem with continuing to go forward? That's their position right now. So we'll see what happens over the next few hours as the players convene again.
And Stephen A., last thing, there was debate and some players who spoke out that said we shouldn't even be restarting this season. What made this the last straw, and what's it going to take here quickly now to get them back on court?
Well, it's the latest thing. When you see Jacob Blake get shot in the back 7 times, it's more of the same in the eyes of the players. And as a result, they believe that people are not listening and people are not hearing, and they have family members in the communities from which they come. You have people complaining, begging them to give a voice to the voiceless. That's the pressurized situation that they're on. That is the challenge, and that's something that they're going to have to address. I still think a season will go on, but it's a tough, it's a 50-50 proposition right now. You can't predict definitively what's going to happen.
All right, Stephen A., always good to see you, my man. We'll be seeing you plenty throughout the day on TV.
Thank you.
All right, thanks.
Chadwick Boseman, A Beautiful Life. Actor, playwright, and producer Chadwick Boseman died on August 28th from colon cancer. Boseman, who was 43 years old, played the lead role in Black Panther. This movie, about a superhero from a fictional African kingdom of Wakanda, became one of the most successful movies of all time. Everyone in Hollywood was saddened by the loss of this talented and big-hearted man. Chadwick Boseman was born in Anderson, South Carolina in 1976. He started writing plays and acting while he was still in school. He attended Howard University, where he studied to be a director and actor. During this time, he was accepted for a summer acting program in London, England. But Boseman and 8 of his classmates could not afford to go to the UK. Several prominent black actors, including Denzel Washington, gave money so these 9 students could attend the program. Boseman started winning TV and stage roles soon after graduation, but he was frustrated at some of the parts he had to play. When he complained about how black characters were being portrayed on one show, he was fired and replaced with another actor. In 2008, he left New York for Los Angeles to pursue his acting career in films. He got his first big break when he won the lead role in the 2013 movie called 42. Chadwick Boseman won the role of Jackie Robinson in the movie 42. He was nervous about playing such a famous person, but he won great reviews for this role. Boseman then went on to play another famous African American, rock and roll singer James Brown. He went through training to learn to act, dance, and sing like this legendary entertainer. Later in his career, he took on the role of Thurgood Marshall, the famous civil rights attorney who became the first black Supreme Court justice. But Boseman will always be best known for his role as Black Panther, also known as T'Challa of Wakanda. Black Panther is the most successful solo superhero movie ever made. It made $1.3 billion worldwide. Chadwick Boseman learned that he had cancer in 2016. He fought this disease for 4 years, but he was a very private man who did not want people to know he was sick. Instead, he spent time working and mentoring younger actors. He also often visited the juvenile cancer wards of hospitals, hoping to help young people deal with this horrible disease.
Overnight, MTV's Video Music Awards kicking off with a tribute to Chadwick Boseman.
We dedicate tonight's show to a man whose spirit touched so many. His impact lives forever.
Let's go play around.
On the screen, he often portrayed real-life icons. From James Brown in Get On Up.
You got lawyers now.
To former Supreme Court Justice Thurgood Marshall.
No, get me up!
And baseball legend Jackie Robinson. But it was his role as the fictional Black Panther that made Boseman a hero in his own right. The groundbreaking lead role of a powerful African king and superhero was a first for a big-budget film. The movie would go on to become a cultural phenomenon, something Boseman spoke to Willie about in 2018.
What do you think are people responding to?
I think there's a thirst for these images. There's a thirst for a black superhero.
Still, the spotlight came as a surprise for the South Carolina native who majored in directing at Howard University.
Never really saw myself doing this. Never really saw myself being on stage or being in front of the camera.
Now, tributes are pouring in for the 43-year-old who died after a 4-year battle with colon cancer, a diagnosis he never spoke about publicly.
The way he handled his life and managing cancer with such humility and grace and dignity lets us all know that he truly was a superhero.
The message from his family sharing the heartbreaking announcement, now the most liked tweet in history. Over the weekend, the NBA observing a moment of silence.
We finally had our black superhero, and to lose that is sad in our community.
On social media, friends and young fans mourn the loss of the on-screen king. In an emotional letter, Black Panther director Ryan Coogler writing in part, Boseman was an epic firework display. In African cultures, we often refer to loved ones that have passed on as ancestors. It is with a heavy heart that I have to reckon with the fact that Chad is an ancestor now. President Barack Obama also writing, to be young, gifted, and black, to use that power to give them heroes to look up to do it all while in pain. What a use of his years.
We all know what it's like to be told that there is not a place for you to be featured, yet you are young, gifted, and black.
While battling cancer privately, Boseman filmed 7 movies, a courageous act that perhaps prepared him for his greatest role.
We all have a superhero in us. We feel like we can do things that are beyond, comprehension.
And guys, Disney says a sequel to Black Panther is in pre-production. No word on how they'll handle the death of Boseman, but he will be in a movie premiering later this year on Netflix. This one hit us all pretty hard this weekend. I think, and Willie, you talked about this earlier this morning, he was so regal on screen and off screen. And I remember when he was here not too long ago, and I'm proudly showing a picture of my boys dressed up as Black Panther, and he was so gracious. And I think he just embodied a real-life superhero. And again, we had no idea what he was going through. No idea.
There was this clip on SiriusXM where he was talking about how these young kids had cancer and they were holding on to see the film start, and you didn't even realize that Chadwick himself was going through it at that very time.
Yeah, he's an amazing guy. He had such dignity to him and such class, and obviously such an incredible talent. The first time I interviewed him was on the set of Get On Up when he was playing James Brown. It was before he'd really been a star, and Mick Jagger was an executive producer. He was in the room, and we were watching him. We were watching Chadwick perform on stage, and Mick Jagger said, "That guy is a superstar. He already is, but the world is about to know."
Wow.
And boy, wasn't he right? What a star, and as you say, Chanel, what a wonderful man. Thank
Kids
you so
admired
much.
him, and adults, we admired him too.
That's right.
New mouse lemur species discovered. This small animal is called a mouse lemur. Mouse lemurs belong to the primate family, which includes apes, monkeys, and humans. All lemur species are native only to the island country of Madagascar, off the eastern coast of Africa. Researchers in Madagascar recently found a new species of mouse lemur. The new lemur, Microcoehibis johani, is named after a primate researcher named Jonah Radzimbizovai. Mouse lemurs are tiny, measuring around 11 inches, including their long tails. The new species is slightly larger. Because these animals are shy and only come out to eat at night, they can be hard to find in the wild. Because they can be hard to find, researchers look for the reflection of the lemur's large eyes while searching for them in the forest. The M. johani mouse lemur is now the 25th known mouse lemur species. These lemurs have reddish-brown fur and a unique stripe of white fur that runs between their eyes. Learning how many mouse lemur species live in Madagascar is important because of the threats the animals faces. The mouse lemur only lives on a small portion of the island, and their habitat is quickly disappearing. The researchers hope that knowing how many mouse lemurs exist will help with their conservation efforts. Lemurs are the oldest known primate on the planet. They arrived in Madagascar around 65 million years ago after the island had split off from the rest of Africa. It is believed they floated from the African mainland on rafts of vegetation. Once on Madagascar, lemurs quickly became the dominant primates on the island until humans arrived. The name lemur comes from the Latin word lemurs, which means ghost or spirit. Unlike other primates, most lemur species live in female-dominated societies. This means females get more resources than males and are usually more aggressive. Lemurs play an important role in their forest ecosystem by spreading seeds. Lemurs eat fruit that grows in the forest and then disperse the seeds through their feces. They also spread pollen by carrying it on their fur. As with other primates, lemurs have fingers and nails similar to those of humans, rather than the paws and claws of other mammals. The more than 100 species of lemur come in many different varieties. The Indri lemur, shown here, is considered a sacred animal on Madagascar. It is known for the unusual singing vocalizations it uses to communicate. The ring-tailed lemur spends more time on the ground than other lemurs. The silky Sifika lemur is known for its long, silky white fur.
I'm on my way to the west of the island, where a few small patches of that ancient forest still remain. These strange, beautiful trees, baobabs, are fire-resistant and too big to cut down. So, in many places, they are the only remnants left of the original forest that once covered this land. It would have been difficult for a creature the size of an elephant bird to live without vegetation of some kind, and today, even the smallest of animals are struggling to survive here. One of those that have managed to do so is the tiniest of all known lemurs. It's called Madame Berthe's mouse lemur, and it was only discovered 10 years ago. Melanie Damhan is part of a team of scientists who are studying the animal, trying to work out how to protect it.
Oh, tiny, tiny.
Tiny, tiny. Just only 30-gram body weight.
Yeah. Smallest primate in the world?
Smallest primate in the world. Big eyes, small ears.
Very big eyes.
Yeah.
And a wet nose.
Yeah.
Melanie and her colleagues catch these lemurs and tag them to build up a picture of their behaviour, essential knowledge if they're to be properly protected.
And how long will he have been in there now?
A few hours.
That all?
So we collect him at night, and then he stays in camp and sleeps in there, and then we release him in the next
And
day.
you've caught him how many times?
Maybe around 20.
So he's accustomed to it?
He's accustomed to it.
And do they travel very far?
They travel very far. They have like
Really?
3-hectare home range, so that's quite a bit for an animal like that.
Certainly is.
Yeah. They might even run like 5 kilometers a night.
Really?
Yeah, an animal like that. I think that's
amazing.
Amazing, yeah.
Okay, let's see him go.
It's coming.
Come on, little one. That's it, that's it. Sure.
The work Melanie and her team are doing is vital for the survival of this little lemur. It's also revealing just why it is that this tiny creature lives here and nowhere else.
This particular liana belongs to a species that only grows in this patch of forest. And on it, and on no other kind of liana, lives this little insect. It's a bug, which feeds by sticking its mouthparts into the liana and sucking out the sap. It then digests what it wants and excretes the rest as honeydew, a sort of sugary liquid. And it's that honeydew, that sugar, that Madame Berthe's lemur needs in its diet. So Madame Berthe's lemur is only found in this particular patch of the forest because of this insect and this liana, which just shows how complicated ecological connections can be and how much you have to know about an animal if you're really going to conserve it.
Country of the Week, Venezuela. Venezuela is a South American country in the northern part of the continent. It is bordered by Guyana, Colombia, and Brazil. There are many different types of environment within Venezuela, and it is one of the most biodiverse countries in the world. South America's largest mountain range begins in Venezuela, the Andes. In addition, some regions of Venezuela are covered in rainforest, while other parts of the country are desert. Venezuela also has some of the largest oil reserves in the world. The government sells its oil to other countries to fund its social programs. Over 28 million people live in Venezuela. More than 50% of these people are mixed race, with European and Native American ancestry. The tallest uninterrupted waterfall in the world, Angel Falls, is located in the southeastern part of Venezuela. Angel Falls is more than 3,000 feet tall and is a UNESCO World Heritage Site. Venezuela is also famous for the Catatumbo lightning, a thunderstorm that rages for about 150 days each year over Lake Maracaibo in the northwest region of the country. Caracas is both the largest city and the capital of Venezuela, and it is home to more than 2 million people. The president of Venezuela is Nicolas Maduro. He has been president since 2013, but his time in office has been controversial both inside and outside of Venezuela. Like most countries in Latin America, Venezuela used to be a Spanish colony. Venezuela gained its independence from Spain because of a revolution led by Simon Bolivar, a military general born in Caracas. Today, Bolivar is considered a national hero in Venezuela, and the Venezuelan currency, the Bolivar, is named for him. Nicolas Maduro was democratically elected to a second term in 2018, but some politicians didn't participate in the election and rejected the result. Many Venezuelans called for Maduro to resign, while others supported him. In 2019, this dispute led to violent conflicts among protesters, counter-protesters, and police. One politician, Juan Guaido, took charge of the anti-government protest. He got support from some people inside and outside Venezuela who claimed he was the president of the country. But this effort to unseat Maduro failed. Before Maduro, the president of Venezuela was Hugo Chavez. Chavez was a well-known and popular leader. Many Venezuelans admired him for his social programs, which greatly reduced poverty and inequality, but some criticized him for what they viewed as overly harsh policies. The national dance of Venezuela is called joropo. The joropo is also a style of music. It is influenced by European, African, and Native American culture. Most joropo songs are accompanied by guitars, maracas, and a Venezuelan harp. This week in history. This week marks the 19th anniversary of a very sad day in U.S. history. On September 11, 2001, terrorists hijacked or took over 4 commercial airplanes. These hijackers flew 3 of the airplanes into buildings in New York City and Virginia, killing a total of 2,977 people. The attacks had an enormous impact on the United States and the rest of the world. 2 of the airplane attacks happened in New York City. The first attack is shown here. These were the deadliest attacks. Tens of thousands of people were working in these buildings, which caught on fire and collapsed. More than 400 first responders were also killed while trying to save others. Many others were injured and thousands developed long-term health problems, including cancer from breathing the toxins in the air. Today, there is a memorial at the spot where the World Trade Center towers once stood. Another airplane was flown into the Pentagon in Arlington, Virginia. This is the main headquarters of the U.S. military. Amazingly, only 125 people died from the crash. Passengers on the 4th plane apparently fought the hijackers, forcing the plane to crash in Pennsylvania. Although all the passengers and terrorists died, the damage would have been much worse if the plane had reached its target. No one knows for sure what it was. Perhaps it was the U.S. Capitol, where the Senate and the House of Representatives meet. The hijackers belong to a terrorist group calling itself Al-Qaeda. Osama bin Laden, a member of one of the world's wealthiest families, was the leader of this group. Al-Qaeda had committed other terrorist attacks against the U.S. in the past. The group said this was to protest U.S. involvement in Middle East conflicts. Most of the hijackers were also born in Saudi Arabia, but that country strongly condemned both Al-Qaeda and terrorism. In fact, although Al-Qaeda claims to be an Islamic group, virtually all Muslim leaders have rejected terrorist violence. After many Islamic countries banned Al-Qaeda, the group found a home in Afghanistan. At the time, this nation was controlled by a radical Islamic organization known as the Taliban. In October of 2001, the U.S. led an international coalition in an invasion of Afghanistan. This invasion had 2 main goals: to destroy Al-Qaeda there and to overthrow the Taliban. Even after being removed from power, the Taliban continued to fight against international troops as well as the elected government of Afghanistan. More recently, government officials and Taliban leaders have been planning to meet for peace talks. At press time, 8,500 U.S. troops are still stationed in this country, and the war in Afghanistan is considered the longest war in U.S. history.
I'm at the 9/11 Memorial Museum, and I'm joined by Cheyenne Hyde. Cheyenne, thanks so much for talking with us today.
Yeah, of course.
Can we go take a look around inside?
Yeah.
All right, let's go.
9/11 is shorthand for Tuesday, September 11, 2001, when 19 hijackers affiliated with Al-Qaeda decided to hijack 4 commercial airline flights and use them as weapons against highly symbolic landmarks of American life. It just starts off like a normal day because it's the first day of school, it's the mayoral primaries, and about 2 billion people witnessed it live. because you have internet, you have radio, and then TV who are now showing their viewers what's happening here.
2 airplanes have crashed into the World Trade Center in an apparent terrorist attack on our country.
So the first attack began at 8:46 a.m. when hijacked Flight 11 struck the north face of the Norton Tower. At 9:03 a.m., hijacked Flight 175 struck the south face of the South Tower. At 9:37 a.m., hijacked Flight 77 struck the outer ring of the Pentagon, which is the headquarters for the U.S. military. And then at 10:03 a.m., hijacked Flight United 93 was deliberately crashed into a field in Somerset County, Pennsylvania. Now that flight is kind of different because that flight was coming out of Newark, New Jersey, a very congested airport. They happened to be delayed about 45 minutes. Finally, when they're in the air, they realize that something is wrong. And then they realize that they were being hijacked. So from the air phones that are still on the planes in 2001, they call their loved ones and the authorities who are on ground, and they tell them what's happening, their situation on board. And as a result, their loved ones and the authorities are telling them what's happening here in New York City and also in Arlington, Virginia at the Pentagon. So those 40 brave men and women, they vote to stage a counterattack. They boil water in the back of the kitchenette area of the plane, and they use a food car as a battering ram to try to gain access into the cockpit. Now, once the 4 hijackers realized that they probably would not be making it to the intended target, which we now know was the Capitol building in Washington, D.C., where Congress was in full session that morning, they decided to crash that plane into an empty field.
So the other airplanes that were in the air were starting to hear about this, right?
Yes.
And for 1 Alpha Charlie, there's some sort of a problem going on out there on the East Coast that we need to know about?
Yeah, I'll keep you advised on that in a second. Amtrak 797, Cleveland.
Yep, but from hijacked Flight 11, we had a flight attendant named Betty Ong who made a phone call during the hijacking to American Airlines reservation agents in North Carolina, and 23 minutes she remains calm and professional as she's reporting about the situation on board the plane and also the identities of the 5 hijackers. And after that first phone call, really the FAA decided to ground all flights nationwide.
So after they grounded all the planes, what happened to all the people?
You have people who are stranded, really, people who can't get back from their vacations, really have no idea what's going on because for some of them, they were stuck on these planes for a number of hours, not maybe being able to get off, go find some hotel, but it wasn't until maybe a few hours later that they heard the news of what had just happened in New York City, and they probably now had an understanding of what their situation would be like.
So are there still effects from 9/11 being felt today?
Of course, we have the Transportation Security Administration, TSA. You have to be completely x-rayed, you have to be patted down. With carry-ons, you can't have huge amounts of liquid, you can't have weapons on board.
This has been an incredible experience, and it brings back to me where I was on 9/11. You know, I was teaching class full of 5th graders and what that day was like. How do you talk to students about this day when they weren't around?
I encourage them to talk to their parents. Ask them what their experience was on September 11th. Ask questions. It's a hard thing to understand why anybody would do this, but it's important that we learn what happened on September 11th. And coming to the museum, we have visitors, kids, school groups who come who also were in Britain before 9/11, and that is how they learn, really watching and reading. So do good research and really ask the questions that you feel are necessary to ask.
Thank you so much for having us here today.
Thank you so much for coming.
And now it's time for Faces and Places. Shinzo Abe. Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe announced recently that he is resigning, citing health reasons. He has a serious chronic condition called ulcerative colitis, which is not life-threatening, but makes it harder for him to do his job. The Prime Minister is 65 years old and has been in office since 2012, plus a year between 2006 and 2007, making him Japan's longest-serving Prime Minister. Abe maintained a good relationship with the U.S. during his time in office, especially since President Trump's election in 2016. Abe believed it was important for Japan to strengthen its military. He wanted to revise Japan's constitution, which does not allow the country to have a strong military. In recent months, Abe's popularity has dipped due to his handling of the coronavirus pandemic. Abe's Liberal Democratic Party is expected to name a successor in the near future. Jeff Bezos. The CEO of Amazon, Jeff Bezos, recently became the first person ever to have a financial worth of over $200 billion. Bezos has been the richest person on the planet since 2017, but his wealth has continued to increase. Amazon stock also recently hit its all-time high at $3,438 per share. Bezos' wealth has increased by nearly $87 billion since January. Several other billionaires, such as Mark Zuckerberg and Elon Musk, have also seen large increases in wealth during the coronavirus pandemic. The second richest person in the world is currently Bill Gates, worth an estimated $124 billion. In response to the news, protesters set up demonstrations outside of Bezos' home, while politicians like Senator Bernie Sanders called for increased taxes on the rich to fund a universal health care program. And in Texas and Louisiana, Hurricane Laura arrived on the shores of Texas and Louisiana during the last week of August. By the time it reached the land, the hurricane had been labeled a Category 4 storm, with wind speeds reaching 150 miles per hour. 23 people were killed by the hurricane in Haiti and the Dominican Republic as it moved toward the United States. In the days leading up to the storm's arrival in the U.S., more than 500,000 people were ordered to evacuate. Over 800,000 people were left without power after the storm swept through the two states. Damage across the two states was widespread, and many were left without clean drinking water. In the U.S., at least 16 people were killed by incidents related to the storm. And in Ecuador, in August, the Guinness Book of World Records certified two people in Ecuador as the oldest married couple in the world. Julio Mora is 110 years old, while his wife, Waldormina Quinteros, is 104. Their combined age was 214 years and 358 days at the time the award was presented. The couple was married in February of 1941 in Quito, Ecuador. They are both retired school teachers and still live in the city where they were married. When interviewed, the couple said they look forward to being reunited with their 4 surviving children, 11 grandchildren, 21 great-grandchildren, and 9 great-great-grandchildren after the coronavirus ends. They claim the key to a healthy, long-term relationship is love, maturity, and mutual respect.
Go to Ecuador now. That is where a man and a woman are being celebrated for being the oldest married couple in the world. Julio Mora is 110 years old. His wife, Waldormina, is 104, so a little May-December romance there. Both are retired teachers and live in Quito, Ecuador. They got married on February 7th, 1941. It was actually a secret ceremony because neither of their families approved of their marriage. Apparently, the relatives' marriage didn't work out, and I'm not sure if they wanted to see more people get married. We don't really have a good explanation for this. They didn't approve. They are the proud parents, by the way, of, get this, 5 children, 11 grandchildren, 21 great-grandchildren, and 9 great-great-grandchildren. Wow. The two now enjoy going to the movies and plays together.
Wow, is right. That's remarkable. I mean,
know.
they're fantastic. They're so cute.
Now it's time for Where in the World. The Pentagon is located in this state number 6. That would be Virginia. Chadwick Boseman grew up in this state number 3. That would be South Carolina. Lemurs can only be found in the wild in this nation number 5. That would be the island of Madagascar. Tensions boiled over in this state after the shooting of Jacob Blake number 1. That would be the state of Wisconsin. This country's capital is Caracas number 2. That would be the country of Venezuela. And finally, Joe Biden represented this state in Congress for 36 years, number 4. That would be the state of Delaware. And now it's time for Remember When. The Miss America pageant was first televised in 1954. For many of us, watching the Miss America pageant on television was an important annual event. The pageant has changed a lot since then, but there are still many people who are interested in finding out the winner. Let's learn more about this phenomenon and what it tells us about ourselves. The first Miss America pageant was held this week in 1921. At first, it was just a swimsuit contest, judged by the standards of the day, and not even held every year. Here you see Margaret Gorman, who was crowned the first Miss America at the age of 16. In 1935, Miss America added the talent category. This helped to put forth the idea that there was more to being Miss America than just looking good in a swimsuit. The pageant also grew into a way for young women to earn scholarships. The first to earn this kind of prize was Miss America 1945 Bess Meyerson. She was the first winner to have graduated from college. She went on to be a TV personality and a figure in New York City politics. For 3 decades, people had to wait until the next day to hear who won on the radio or by reading the information in their local newspaper. But in the 1950s, the organizers of the pageant figured out that it would be a perfect event for TV viewers. In September 1954, the Miss America pageant was televised for the first time. The picture shown at the left shows Miss America 1954, Evelyn A., crowning Miss America 1955, and that was Lee Merriweather. Bob Russell hosted that year. It was not until the following year that Bert Parks came along as host, a role he continued for the next 24 years. Other Miss America winners have gone on to be famous as well. Marianne Mobley became a well-known actress and singer. Phyllis George and Gretchen Carlson are other Miss Americas who went on to long TV careers. And then there is actress and singer Vanessa Williams, who in 1983 became the first African-American woman to be crowned Miss America. She is one of the most famous Miss America winners, but was forced to resign her Miss America position early due to nude photos of her being published. Last December, Camille Schrier was named Miss America 2020. Schrier, who represented the state of Virginia, is a doctoral pharmacy student. For the talent part of the pageant, she put on a white coat and performed an experiment on stage. Since this year's competition has been canceled due to the coronavirus pandemic, Schrier will be the first winner to ever serve as Miss America for 2 years.
When it comes to Miss America, we're used to seeing pageant contestants who can dance, play the piano, and sing like this. When we swag away. Or even like this. But this year, you'll want to keep an eye out for Miss Virginia.
I've loved science since I was a little girl.
Camille Schrier is a 24-year-old pharmacy student who, for her talent, ditched the glittery outfit for a lab coat, goggles, and rubber gloves.
But be careful. Don't try this one at home.
She blew away the competition with a colorful explosion of hydrogen peroxide, leaving her makeshift laboratory covered with a giant blob. And guess what? It worked.
Miss Virginia 2019 is Miss Dominion Camille Schrier.
I spoke with Camille today. Will we see this talent on the Miss America stage?
I think you will. It might be a little bit different, but it definitely will be a chemistry demonstration. It might be the same one, or it might be something different. You'll have to stay tuned and find out.
Science really is all around us.
And that's it for this edition of News Currents. Join us again next week for another new edition of News Currents. This is ECTV.